The service dog froze in the police station, ears perked forward as the little girl made a subtle hand motion. Suddenly, the dog's demeanor changed completely, barking urgently, positioning herself between the child and the woman claiming to be her stepmother. "Control your animal," the woman demanded. But when they finally understood what the dog had seen, everyone in the station realized why the little girl had been silent all day. So what exactly did the dog understand that no human did? First, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The late July sun cast dappled shadows across Woodland Park, where children's laughter mingled with the gentle splashing of the duck pond. Joggers navigated meandering paths while families sought respite from the sweltering heat that had gripped Portland for days. Harold and Martha Simmons, a retired couple in their 70s, followed their daily ritual of an afternoon walk, Martha occasionally steadying herself on Harold's arm as they rounded the eastern edge of the pond. It was then that Martha's grip suddenly tightened. "Harold," she whispered, nodding toward a solitary figure on a bench. "Look at that poor child, all alone." A small girl, no more than 7 or 8 years old, sat perfectly still, her feet dangling several inches above the ground. What immediately struck the couple as odd was her attire. A thick turtleneck sweater, long sleeves, and what appeared to be gloves, despite the 90-degree heat. Her head was bowed, dark hair falling forward to obscure her face. "Hello there, sweetheart," Martha called gently, approaching with a warm smile. "Are you lost? Where's your mommy or daddy?" The girl didn't respond or look up. She merely gripped the edge of the bench tighter, her small shoulders hunching forward. "Maybe she doesn't speak English," Harold suggested, scanning for any distressed adults searching for a child. The park was filled with people, yet this little girl sat utterly alone. Martha knelt carefully, bringing herself to the child's eye level. "Are you okay, honey? Do you need help finding your parents?" Still no response. When Martha gently touched the girl's shoulder, she flinched violently, pulling away as though the touch had burned her. "Something's not right, Harold," Martha murmured, concern deepening the wrinkles around her eyes. "She seems terrified." After 20 minutes yielded no response. Not a word, not a nod, not even eye contact. Harold pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police. This child needs help." The dispatcher assured them an officer would arrive shortly. Officer Edward and his canine partner are already patrolling nearby. They're on their way. Officer Edward guided his patrol car through the park, one hand on the wheel, while the other reached back to scratch behind Roxane's ears. The Belgian Malinois pushed her head against his palm, her intelligent amber eyes alert despite the afternoon heat. "Another quiet day, girl," Edward commented, glancing at his partner in the rearview mirror. "How about we swing by the lake after this?" At 3 years old, Roxane was in her prime, 65 pounds of disciplined muscle and unwavering loyalty. Her tan coat gleamed in the sunlight, her black face mask giving her the regal expression characteristic of her breed. The specialized K9 unit vest she wore bore search and rescue emblazoned across its sides. Their partnership had begun 3 years earlier when Edward was paired with Roxane as a 10-month-old recruit. Their first weeks together had been challenging, Roxane's intelligence initially manifesting as stubbornness, but that difficult beginning had forged an unbreakable bond. Now, they moved as one unit, often communicating without words or commands. Just months ago, they'd tracked a kidnapped 4-year-old through abandoned warehouses, Roxane leading officers directly to the terrified child, while Edward apprehended the suspect. Their success stories had made them something of a legend in the department. The radio crackled to life. Unit K9, respond to the east side of Woodland Park Duck Pond. Elderly couple reports a child, female, approximately 7 years old, alone and unresponsive. Possible language barrier or special needs situation. "This is K9 unit, responding now, ETA 3 minutes, Edward replied. He turned toward the pond, watching as Roxane perked up at the call, her posture straightening with focused attention. Edward had always been impressed by how his partner seemed to understand their assignments. Calls involving children, in particular, brought out a special gentleness in the otherwise imposing dog. "Looks like we've got a lost little one, Roxy," he said. "Let's go find out what's happening." They arrived minutes later, Edward spotting the elderly couple standing near a bench, hovering protectively near a small figure. He attached Roxane's standard lead rather than her tracking harness. This wasn't a search situation, at least not yet. "Stay close," he instructed as they approached. Roxane padded silently beside him, her gait relaxed but alert. The elderly man waved them over, relief evident on his weathered face. "Officer, thank goodness. We've been with her almost 30 minutes now. She won't speak, won't even look at us." Edward approached slowly, taking in the scene with practiced observation. The girl remained motionless, her gaze fixed on the ground. Up close, her appearance raised immediate concerns. Despite the sweltering heat, she wore a thick navy turtleneck sweater, long sleeves pulled down to her wrists, and thin cotton gloves. Dark leggings covered her legs completely, and she wore scuffed sneakers that looked a size too large. "I'm Officer Edward," he introduced himself quietly. "This is Roxane. What can you tell me about finding her?" "She was just sitting here alone," Martha explained. "We tried talking to her, but she won't respond. We thought maybe she doesn't understand English. Or perhaps she's deaf." Edward nodded, crouching down a few feet away. "Has anyone else approached her? Any adults looking for a child?" "No one," Harold confirmed. "We've been watching. No one's come searching." Edward turned his attention to the little girl. "Hi there," he said gently. "My name's Edward, and this is my friend Roxane. She's a police dog, but she's very friendly." Not a flicker of acknowledgement crossed the child's face. Her gloved hands remained clasped tightly in her lap. Edward had expected Roxane to stay in her usual heel position, but his partner moved forward, approaching the girl with unusual caution. Normally confident and direct, Roxane was instead making herself smaller, movements deliberate and slow, behavior she reserved for approaching injured victims. "Easy, Roxy," Edward murmured, though he knew he didn't need to caution his partner. The girl's eyes finally moved, tracking Roxane with a flicker of interest, the first response she'd shown to anyone. The dog stopped a foot away, sitting down and tilting her head slightly, ears forward but relaxed. "She likes you," Edward said, remaining where he was. He reached slowly into his pocket, producing a small stuffed dog, a miniature replica of a police canine that he kept for situations involving children. "This is a little Roxane," he explained, placing it on the bench beside the girl. "I think we should go to the station, where it's cool, and we can figure out how to find your family. Would that be okay?" After a moment's hesitation, the girl slid off the bench, though she avoided taking Edward's hand. What caught his attention was how she purposefully positioned herself closer to Roxane than to him. At the patrol car, Edward explained gently, "Roxane usually rides back there, but today she can sit up front with me." The girl hesitated, eyeing the cage partition with visible apprehension. Edward recognized the fear response. Many children found police vehicles intimidating. "It's just to keep Roxane from jumping into my lap while I'm driving it," he explained with a reassuring smile. When the girl still wouldn't move toward the vehicle, Roxane did something unexpected. She walked to the open door and hopped into the back seat herself, settling on one side and looking expectantly at the child. Edward blinked in surprise. Roxane was breaking protocol. Service dogs weren't supposed to make decisions without commands. Yet something in his partner's demeanor told Edward to trust her judgment. "Looks like Roxane wants to ride with you," he said casually. "Would that be okay?" The subtle shift in the girl's posture suggested relief. She took a tentative step toward the vehicle, then another. When she finally climbed in beside Roxane, Edward noticed her wince when using her right arm. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. The girl immediately shook her head, quickly hiding her arm, her first direct response. Edward made a mental note, but didn't press further. Building trust was more important than immediate answers. During the drive, Edward watched through the rearview mirror as the girl's tension gradually eased. She remained still, but her eyes kept darting to Roxane, who stayed focused entirely on the child rather than watching out windows as usual. Eventually, one gloved hand came to rest tentatively on Roxane's back. "I've called ahead to the station," Edward said conversationally. "Officer Maya will be there to meet us. She knows sign language, which if that would help you communicate." The station's fluorescent lighting cast a harsh glow across the intake area as Edward guided the silent child through the front doors, Roxane walking perfectly beside her. Several officers looked up, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern at the sight of the small figure, dwarfed by her too warm clothing. Officer Maya Lewis waited by the reception desk, her warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled. At 34, Maya was one of the department's most respected officers, 12 years on the force, and special training in cases involving children. The photographs on her desk of her two young daughters were a reminder of why she'd specialized in protecting the most vulnerable victims. "Hi there, Maya said, her voice gentle as she knelt to the girl's eye level. "I'm Maya. Welcome to our station." The girl remained silent, half hiding behind Roxane, who had positioned herself protectively between the child and the busy station environment. Edward touched Maya's shoulder, tilting his head toward the quieter break room. Maybe somewhere less busy. Once settled, Maya began signing while speaking. "My name is Maya. Can you tell me your name?" The girl watched Maya's hands with interest, but made no move to respond. Edward had seen this reaction before when working with traumatized children. Attention without engagement. "I'm thinking she's not deaf," Edward said quietly. "She responds to sounds, just not verbally." Maya nodded, switching tactics. She retrieved a tablet and opened a drawing program, offering it to the girl. "Would you like to draw? Maybe draw your home or your parents?" The child looked at the tablet but didn't reach for it. Maya placed it on the table, not pushing, but leaving the option open. "I've got apple juice and cookies in the break room fridge," Edward suggested. "Roxane always says they're the best cookies in Portland." This earned the first hint of expression, the barest ghost of a smile flickering across the girl's face before disappearing. While Edward retrieved the snacks, Roxane, who had settled at the girl's feet, suddenly raised her head, attention focused on the child's hands. With deliberate movement, the dog nosed at one of the thin cotton gloves, gently tugging at the fabric. "Roxane," Edward said automatically, preparing to correct his partner's behavior. But Maya held up a hand, stopping him. "Wait." They watched as Roxane continued gently pulling at the glove. After a moment's hesitation, the girl allowed the dog to tug it partially off, revealing the edge of a darkening bruise encircling her tiny wrist. "Edward," Maya whispered, her expression grave. The bruising pattern was distinctive. Finger-shaped marks consistent with someone having grabbed the child's arm with excessive force. Edward had seen similar injuries too many times in his career. Maya carefully reached out. "Sweetheart, can I see your arm? Just to make sure you're okay." The girl immediately pulled her hand back, tugging the glove into place and crossing her arms tightly across her chest. Edward and Maya exchanged knowing glances. This wasn't simply a lost child situation anymore. This was potentially an abuse case. The long sleeves, the turtleneck in summer, the gloves, the silence, all textbook signs of a child hiding injuries and trauma. "I'll call Child Protective Services," Maya said quietly, "and we should have medical check her." Edward nodded, maintaining a calm exterior, despite the anger building within him. Roxane remained pressed against the girl's legs, her usual disciplined demeanor replaced by what could only be described as protective vigilance. The station doors burst open with a bang that echoed through the building. A woman in her mid-30s rushed in, her designer handbag swinging wildly from her arm as she approached the front desk with frantic energy. "My stepdaughter!" she exclaimed, voice carrying down the hallway to the break room. "I was told she's here! Sophie! Where's Sophie?" Edward immediately noticed the girl's body go rigid at the sound of the woman's voice, her small shoulders hunching forward as if trying to make herself smaller. Roxane's reaction was equally telling. The Belgian Malinois rose to her feet, positioning herself directly in front of the child, ears forward, body tense. Maya placed a reassuring hand on the girl's shoulder. "Stay here with Roxane, sweetie. We'll be right back." In the main area, the woman was gesturing dramatically as she spoke to the desk sergeant. Tears streamed down her carefully made-up face, mascara creating artistic smudges beneath her eyes that somehow didn't diminish her polished appearance. "I've been searching everywhere," she was saying, voice trembling with emotion. "1 minute, she was beside me while shopping. The next, gone. I've been out of my mind with worry." "Monica Keene," she supplied when Edward approached. "My stepdaughter is Sophie Keene. She's 7. Is she here? Please tell me she's safe." "Ms. Keene, I'm Officer Edward. I found Sophie at Woodland Park about an hour ago." Monica spun toward him, relief flooding her features as she pressed a manicured hand to her heart. "Oh, thank God. Thank you, officer. I've been beside myself." She looked past him expectantly. "Where is she?" "She's in our break room," Edward explained, subtly positioning himself to block the direct path. "She seems to be unharmed, but she hasn't spoken to us. Is she nonverbal?" Something flickered across Monica's expression. So brief, Edward almost missed it. No, she speaks just fine normally. She must be in shock from wandering off. Poor thing gets frightened easily." She stepped forward. "I should take her home right away." Maya appeared at Edward's side. "Miss Keene, would you mind telling us how Sophie came to be alone in the park? It's quite a distance from the shopping district." "We were at Westfield Mall. I turned around and she was gone. She must have wandered off. She does that sometimes, just doesn't listen." Edward noted this explanation. The mall was nearly 3 miles from where they'd found the girl, a significant distance for a child to cover alone. "When did you notice she was missing?" he asked. "Around noon," Monica replied quickly. Edward checked his watch. It was now 4:30 p.m. "That's a long time to be missing. Did you contact the police earlier?" Irritation flashed across Monica's face before disappearing. "Mall security said they'd handle it. Can I see her now?" Edward nodded toward the break room. "She's right this way. But I should mention, our K9 officer, Roxane, has been staying close to her." "She's afraid of dogs," Monica said instantly. "The dog should be removed." This contradicted what Edward had observed. Sophie had shown her first and only positive response to Roxane. "That's strange," Edward remarked. "She's been quite comfortable with Roxane since we found her." As they approached the break room, Edward could see through the window that Sophie was now pressed into the corner of the couch, Roxane standing at attention before her like a furry sentinel. When they entered, Monica rushed forward. "Sophie, baby, I've been so worried." The transformation in Sophie was immediate and disturbing. Her body went completely rigid, her gaze dropping to the floor, hands clutching each other tightly in her lap. Not the reaction of a child relieved to see her parent after a frightening separation. More telling was Roxane's response. The dog moved directly into Monica's path, a low growl rumbling in her chest, a warning Edward had rarely heard from his normally disciplined partner. "Officer, control your dog," Monica demanded, stopping short. "Roxane, back," Edward commanded, though his partner complied only partially, moving just enough to allow Monica visual access to Sophie while still maintaining a protective position. "Oh, sweetie, I was so worried," Monica crooned, though she didn't attempt to move past Roxane again. "What were you thinking wandering off like that? You know better." Sophie remained motionless, not looking up, not reaching for her stepmother. Behavior starkly different from what Edward would expect from a child reunited with a loving parent. "Ms. Keene," Maya said gently, "we need to complete some paperwork before releasing Sophie into your custody. Standard procedure. Would you mind following me to fill out some forms?" Monica's smile tightened. "Of course. Sophie, stay right there. We'll go home soon." As Monica followed Maya to the desk outside, Edward watched Sophie's shoulders drop slightly once her stepmother was out of sight. Roxane immediately returned to the girl's side, pressing against her legs in what could only be described as a comforting gesture. Through the glass partition, Edward could see the stepmother's pleasant facade occasionally slipping when she thought no one was watching, irritation flashing across her features as she checked her watch repeatedly. Sophie needs to see a doctor, Maya said casually as Monica filled out a form. We notice she seems uncomfortable using her right arm. Monica's pen paused momentarily. She fell off the swing set last week. Just a bruise. And may I ask about her clothing? It seems quite warm for July. She gets cold easily, Monica replied smoothly. Poor circulation. And the gloves? A flash of annoyance crossed Monica's face before she composed herself. Eczema. The gloves protect her skin. Look, are these questions really necessary? When Monica left to use the restroom, Maya quickly joined Edward in the break room. Something's not adding up. Her story has inconsistencies and her behavior doesn't match a genuinely concerned parent. Maya knelt before Sophie. Sweetheart, we want to help you. If something is wrong, if someone is hurting you, we can keep you safe. Would it be okay if I look at your arms? She asked. After a long moment, Sophie gave the slightest of nods. Maya carefully rolled up one sleeve, then the other, revealing a pattern of bruises in various stages of healing. Some clearly finger marks, others larger contusions. Edward felt his jaw tighten at the sight. Oh, sweetheart, Maya whispered. Thank you for showing us. What are you doing? Monica's voice rang out from the doorway. Sophie immediately yanked her sleeves down, her entire body tensing. Roxane placed herself between the girl and her stepmother, a low rumble building in her chest. Ms. Keene, Maya said, standing, we have some concerns about Sophie's well-being that we need to address. Monica's expression hardened for a moment before melting into concerned confusion. What? Sophie is perfectly well cared for. She's clumsy, always has been. Falls constantly. These bruises aren't consistent with falls, Edward stated flatly. Are you accusing me of something, officer? Monica's voice took on a dangerous edge. We're leaving, Sophie! Come here! Now! Edward moved to block her path. Ms. Keene, we're not finished with our... Unless you're charging me with something, or have a court order, you have no right to keep us here. The legal reality hung in the air. Without clear evidence or a confession, they couldn't legally prevent Monica from taking Sophie. Perhaps we could compromise, Maya suggested. We need to complete just one more form. Why don't you finish the paperwork at my desk and we'll bring Sophie out when you're done? Monica hesitated, then agreed. 5 minutes, then we're leaving. As Monica followed Maya back to the desk, Edward could see Sophie's rigid posture ease slightly once her stepmother was out of sight. Roxane immediately relaxed her defensive stance, turning to press her nose gently against the girl's hand. It's okay, Edward said softly. You're safe right now. Sophie's eyes darted to the doorway, clearly tracking her stepmother's location through the glass partition. Edward noticed how she watched Monica's every move, like prey monitoring a predator. Maya kept Monica occupied with questions and forms, strategically positioning herself so the stepmother's back was to the break room. In that moment of relative safety, something shifted in Sophie's demeanor. She straightened slightly, eyes darting once more to ensure her stepmother wasn't watching. Then, with trembling hands, she began to make a gesture. Her small fingers formed what appeared to be a specific sign. Thumb tucked between middle and ring fingers, palm facing inward, moved in a short downward motion. The movement was hesitant, clearly unpracticed, yet deliberate. Edward tilted his head, not recognizing the gesture. Are you trying to tell me something, Sophie? She repeated the motion more urgently this time, her eyes pleading for understanding. Edward watched closely, but couldn't decipher the meaning. I'm sorry, he said gently. I don't understand. Can you show me again? Before Sophie could repeat the gesture, the break room fell silent as Roxane's demeanor transformed dramatically. The Belgian Malinois launched to her feet, unleashing a sharp, authoritative bark that echoed through the station, nothing like her earlier warning growls. This was a trained alert, like she used when finding evidence or detecting danger. Every head in the station turned toward the sound. Roxane barked again, standing directly in front of Sophie. Her body language shifted from protection to alert signaling. Roxane, what is it? Edward asked, startled by his partner's sudden change. The dog looked between Sophie's hands and Edward's face repeatedly, barking again with unmistakable urgency. Through the glass partition, Edward saw Monica rise from her chair, face contorted with alarm and anger. What is that dog doing? Get it away from her! Maya moved to intercept Monica, but the woman pushed past her, storming toward the break room. This is ridiculous. We're leaving right now. As Monica burst through the door, Roxane positioned herself squarely between the woman and Sophie, her barking growing more intense, more insistent. Control that animal immediately, Monica demanded, reaching for Sophie's arm. Come on, we're going home where it's safe. Sophie shrank back against the couch, terror evident in her eyes as Monica reached for her. What happened next stunned everyone in the room. Roxane, trained to never, under any circumstances, show aggression toward civilians, planted herself firmly in Monica's path and snarled, teeth bared in unmistakable warning. The sound was primal, protective, a clear declaration that Monica would not be permitted to approach the child. Officer Edward, Monica shrieked, call off your dog this instant or I'll have your badge. Edward started to issue the command but stopped, recognition dawning as he watched Roxane's behavior. In their years of partnership, he'd learned to read his canine partner as clearly as any human colleague. Roxane wasn't being aggressive. She was communicating something specific about Sophie's hand gesture. Maya, he called urgently. Do you recognize the sign Sophie was making? Maya moved closer, observing as Sophie, emboldened by Roxane's protection, repeated the gesture with trembling fingers. Recognition flashed across Maya's face. That's the sign for help, she said. She said, yet her voice tight with emotion. It's American Sign Language for help. The room fell silent except for Roxane's continued low growl. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, her first visible emotion since they'd found her in the park. Relief that someone finally understood. That's absurd, Monica snapped, her earlier maternal concern evaporating. Sophie doesn't know sign language. She's making things up for attention. She's asking for help, Maya insisted quietly, moving to stand beside Edward. And your canine partner recognized it. Edward glanced down at Roxane, who maintained her protective stance before Sophie. The realization clicked into place. Service dogs were often trained to recognize distress signals, including basic sign language commands for emergencies. Roxane had recognized the universal distress signal while the humans had missed it. Where did you learn that sign, Sophie? Edward asked gently, ignoring Monica's increasingly agitated presence. The girl's eyes darted fearfully to her stepmother, then back to Edward. She remained silent, but her fingers twisted anxiously in her lap. This is ridiculous, Monica declared, her voice rising. I'm taking my stepdaughter home now. She's clearly overwhelmed and making things up. Sergeant Williams appeared in the doorway, his veteran presence immediately commanding attention. Is there a problem here, officers? Sir, Edward explained quickly, we have reason to believe this child may be in danger if released to her stepmother's custody. She's displaying signs of physical abuse and has requested help. Lies, Monica exclaimed. She's a troubled child who makes up stories. Maya knelt beside Sophie. Sweetheart, would it be okay if I roll up your sleeves again, just to show Sergeant Williams? After a moment, Sophie nodded. Maya carefully revealed the bruises, fingerprint marks, larger contusions, and even small circular burns that Edward had missed in his initial observation. Those are from her falling, Monica insisted, though her voice had lost its conviction. And these? Maya asked softly, carefully removing one of Sophie's gloves to reveal similar marks across her hand. Children don't typically fall on their hands repeatedly in this pattern. Sergeant Williams' expression darkened as he took in the evidence. Ms. Keene, I think it would be best if you came with me while we contact Child Protective Services. You have no right! Monica's voice rose to a shout. That's my stepdaughter! Ma'am, Williams interrupted firmly, you can either come voluntarily, or I can have you escorted to a holding cell while we investigate these allegations. Your choice. As Officer Jenkins led Monica away, her parting words landed like poisoned darts. Sophie, remember what happens to little girls who tell lies about their parents. Remember what I promised. The threat, thinly veiled, hung in the air as Monica was escorted out. Only when she had disappeared from sight did Sophie's rigid posture begin to crumble, her small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Roxane immediately returned to Sophie's side, pressing against her legs in a gesture of comfort that required no translation. Edward watched in awe as his highly trained partner, usually so disciplined and protocol-focused, seemed to understand exactly what this child needed in the moment. You're safe now, Maya assured her, carefully not touching Sophie without permission. She can't hurt you anymore. We won't let her. With Monica secured elsewhere, Maya brought a child-sized blanket kept for young victims, draping it gently around Sophie's shoulders. This might feel better than that sweater. It's pretty warm in here. After a moment's hesitation, Sophie nodded, allowing Maya to help her remove the heavy turtleneck. Beneath it, she wore a thin t-shirt that revealed the full extent of the abuse, bruises in various stages of healing mapped across her small arms and collarbone, telling a story of ongoing violence that stole the breath from everyone in the room. Sophie, Maya said gently, can you tell us if Monica did this to you? For a long moment, the girl remained silent, her gaze fixed on her lap, where one hand absently stroked Roxane's fur. Then, in a voice so soft, it was barely audible, she whispered, yes. The single word, the first they'd heard from her, hung in the air like a thunderclap. Thank you for telling us, Maya said, careful to keep her voice steady despite the anger Edward could see building behind her eyes. That was very brave. Sophie looked up, her eyes meeting Maya's directly for the first time. She said no one would believe me, that I was a liar, that Dad would be angry if I told. Your dad doesn't know about what Monica does? Edward asked gently. Sophie shook her head. He's gone a lot. When he's home, she's different. Different how? Maya prompted gently. Nice, Sophie whispered. She doesn't get mad when he's there. How did you learn the sign for help? Edward asked. A ghost of a smile touched Sophie's lips. TV show about a service dog that saved a girl. The girl used hand signals when she couldn't talk. Service dogs are trained to respond to certain emergency signals, he explained to Sophie. Roxane knew exactly what you were trying to tell us, even when we didn't understand. For the first time, Sophie reached out deliberately to touch Roxane, stroking the dog's head with tentative gentleness. She knew I was scared at the park. She stayed with me in the car. She's pretty smart, Edward agreed, warmth filling his chest as he watched his partner lean into the child's touch. And she doesn't make mistakes about people. She gets really mad when I make noise, Sophie explained in her soft voice. So I learned to be quiet all the time, even when it hurts. The words lanced through Edward like physical pain. He exchanged glances with Maya, seeing his own emotion reflected in her eyes. Child Protective Services had been contacted, a medical exam arranged, and Monica's questioning begun in another room. Sergeant Williams appeared in the doorway. CPS will be here in 20 minutes. Dr. Patel is already waiting to examine her. Maya nodded, then turned back to Sophie. Soon some very nice people will come to help make sure you're safe. A doctor will check your injuries, but I'll stay with you the whole time if you want. Sophie's fingers tightened in Roxane's fur. Can she stay too? Edward looked to his sergeant, who nodded without hesitation. Of course. Roxane is officially assigned to your case now. Relief visibly washed over Sophie's features. Then concern clouded her eyes. What about after? Where will I go? The question hung heavy in the air. The eternal challenge of the system. Foster care was overwhelmed, emergency placements limited, and the process of investigating a parent for potential complicity would take time. You know, Maya said, her tone deliberately casual, I have a spare bedroom at my house. My daughters have been asking for a sleepover guest for ages. Edward glanced at his colleague, understanding immediately what she was suggesting. Emergency fostering by officers wasn't uncommon in their department, especially in cases where a child had bonded with a specific officer during trauma. Really? Sophie asked, a flicker of hope illuminating her face. Really, Maya confirmed. If that's something you might like, and if the social worker agrees, of course. Could Roxane visit? Edward smiled, feeling a tightness in his chest loosen slightly. I think that could definitely be arranged. Roxane would like that very much. As if understanding the conversation, Roxane raised her head to lick Sophie's hand once, tail thumping gently against the couch in affirmation. By the time the social worker arrived, Sophie had drifted to sleep, her head resting against the couch arm, Roxane maintaining her vigilant position beside her. The dog looked up as the adult spoke in hushed tones, but refused to move from her self-appointed post. She doesn't usually do this, Edward explained quietly. Roxane is normally all business, but she's refused to leave Sophie's side since we found her. The social worker smiled. Animals often sense what humans need. Seems like this one has appointed herself Sophie's guardian angel. As arrangements were finalized, Edward watched the sleeping child and his vigilant partner, marveling at how a single hand gesture, recognized not by humans, but by a dog, had changed the course of a life today. Outside the window, twilight was falling over Portland, streetlights beginning to illuminate the city. In the quiet of the break room, a little girl slept peacefully, perhaps for the first time in months, guarded by a dog who had understood her silent plea when no one else could. Have you ever noticed how animals seem to understand things that humans sometimes miss? The bond between a child and an animal can be extraordinary, creating a silent understanding that transcends language. What would you have done if you were in Edward's position? Would you have trusted Roxane's instincts even when there wasn't clear evidence of danger? And how many children like Sophie might be out there right now using whatever silent signals they can in hopes that someone, anyone, will understand their plea for help? Sometimes the smallest gesture can speak volumes if only we're paying attention. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary canine stories. Don't forget to press that notification bell so you never miss our daily uploads. Share this video with anyone who appreciates the incredible bond between humans and their four-legged partners in law enforcement. Check out our other amazing canine hero stories appearing on your screen right now, including the incredible tale of a tracking dog who found a missing Alzheimer's patient during a blizzard. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video.